Hi all, this is Skate, and I'm going to try and keep the rambles to a minimum because we have a lot of buffs and nerfs to go through. Now, some of the buffs you're going to see are pretty extreme, some are quite minor, and it's the same with the nerfs. Some I feel are slightly justified and I don't think will have any real negative impact on said tanks, and some are a little bit ludicrous. Yeah, I don't know what the hell's going on here. This is going to be an interesting patch, and I think there's going to be a lot of different tanks played because of this. Now, the majority of the buffs and nerfs are towards the lower tiers. To me, it looks like Tier 5 and Tier 6 are having a bit of a revamp. There are some key points located on the left-hand side of the video, but the first thing we're going to look at is the Matilda IV. You'll see it's had a buff. It's quite an impressive buff, but it's not insane. Reload has gone from 7.38 to 7. Pen has had a nice healthy pen buff from 97 to 110, and the APCR has gone from 121 to 155. It's also gained a bit more brake horsepower and a little bit better dispersion on the move, along with terrain resistance improvements. All in all, not a bad buff. It should hopefully allow people to bring this tank out more often on the battlefield. Next premium tank to receive a buff, Churchill III. Why are they buffing the Churchill III? It's outrageous as it is. And this one lost me for words slightly, only because I just don't understand why it needs a buff. Now, they've improved the track traverse from 17.73 to 20.86. Again, this is without provisions, etc. And they've added a new gun. The Churchill III has a 6-pounder. The 6-pounder I think is a fantastic gun, but they've added a 76mm, which has an aim time of 4 seconds, less pen by 20mm, but you have 160 damage. So you're looking at pretty much the same DPM, but you don't have to appear as often to use said DPM. Personally, I'm going to stick to my 6-pounder on this tank because, well, I like a said gun. I still don't think the Churchill III needs a buff in any shape or form, but they're going to give a buff. I'm going to take said buff. And that track traverse is all going to help towards angling the tank quicker. I still don't get it though. I really don't. Obviously it's only my personal opinion, but I really don't think this tank did need a buff. Moving on swiftly because we do have a lot of tanks to cover. SU-85i. This tank has received quite a substantial buff to its accuracy. 0.403 has been adjusted to 0.336. Now, it doesn't actually sound like a big deal, but add that to a 1 second quicker aiming time, and this thing is really going to hit a lot more accurately, especially when you have your equipment to reduce that 0.33 even lower. Pretty much this tank's gone from having Russian accuracy to something more in line with American or British accuracy. You can see what I mean now in regards to they are literally just rebalancing tier 5 and 6. There's a huge amount of changes here. And the T14 has received a big buff. I do think this tank needed a buff, but this is a big buff. You've got your reload reduced from 7.58 to 6.23. Add some rammer and provisions to that, and you're getting your reload down to 5.5. That's impressive, especially when you add it to an aim time which is half a second quicker. Dispersion has gone from 0.44 to 0.41, and they've improved the track traverse by just over 3 degrees. That's a good thing. This tank feels mobile, it feels great. I genuinely think we're going to see a lot more of these at tier 5 now. Because it's nice to know that we've paid for premium tanks, and they are looking at revising them. They haven't done it by a half measure though, Jesus no. This is a big buff. And the Excelsior has received a healthy buff too. It's gone from 7.48 to 6.23 on the reload, which again means you can get your reload down to 5.5 seconds with provisions and a rammer. They've also improved the terrain resistance on said tank. This was very, very sluggish pulling off, but as you can see there, it pulls off a lot better than what it did. So it's a bit more mobile, it's got more DPM. Again, something I think we're going to see more of these in the future at tier 5. And rightly so, I paid real money for one of these, so I would like to make sure that it could be used a bit more. So this is something I think will receive a welcome buff. I do think the Excelsior needed one. And if you have one of these in your garage, I imagine you're probably feeling the same to welcome said buff. And again, moving on swiftly because we do still have way more to cover. Matilda Black Prince. They've improved the mobility on this. Brake horsepower has gone up from 190 to 320. That's significant. Traverse speed has gone from 36.5 to 38.59 without provisions. As you can see, spinning on the spot, it's quite quick, because they've also changed the terrain resistance. So far for premium tanks, it's win-win all round. None of them have been nerfed. Obviously, they can't really nerf the premium tanks, but they've all received quite nice buffs. SU-100Y. I don't know why this tank needed a buff, but it's been given a buff. Dispersion on track traverse has been decreased. They haven't provided the figures as to what, though. But they've also knocked over a second off the aiming time. Not a big buff, but I'm surprised that this tank did even need a buff. And then on to my personal favourite of the premium tank buffs. They've buffed the Drennen Max. Again. Why? And it's not even a little one. 11.49 on the reload has been dropped by 2 seconds nearly to 9.58. I mean, there's one shot already into the Cromwell. We're pulling back behind cover, we've got one other shot into him, and a very, very quick reload with our adrenaline on finishes him off ridiculously quickly. Your reload has pretty much, with all your equipment, etc., you can get it down to 8.4. Now this is a tier 6 tank with insane gun depression. Granted it's got no armor, but it's got amazing gun depression. With an 8.4 second reload doing 310 damage. And they've reduced the aiming time by half a second. I genuinely can't get over this. Purely because they're constantly buffing this tank, and I don't think it needs a buff. If you watched my Drennen Max video, or my Drennen Max review / guide, I really, really like this tank, and every time they buff it, I find it amusing. They've put a better, bigger engine in this thing, they've improved the accuracy over and over again, they've improved the track traverse, they previously improved the reload, and 9.58 it's gone down to. I mean, come on, put this thing on a ridge, and it's going to be devastating. So I imagine everyone's going to welcome all of those premium tank buffs. But there's also another buff which I wanted to highlight, and that is the brand new gun on the MT25. And if you ask me, this new gun is going to be outrageously good. Now the existing autoloader sadly lacks penetration, which makes it quite bad. This tank has an extra 30, well this gun has an extra 30mm of penetration. You're losing DPM, by the way. But that really doesn't matter with an autoloader, especially when you have that short a reload between each shell. So if you're looking at comparing the new gun with the old autoloader, you'll notice that you are losing what looks like on paper significant DPM. But I tell you what, this new gun is amazing, and I think we're going to see a lot more MT25s. I felt the MT25 previously was a bit lackluster with the autoloader, or a bit disappointing. I think it's going to be a bit broken with this. I mean, you're pretty much looking 0.7 seconds between each shot. I mean, I'm going to go past this gap with an M6. I'm not going to slow down, and every single shot goes into him, and you're looking at an average of 360 damage per clip. At tier 6, with only an 11-second reload, before you can come back down and unload another full clip without having to worry too much on penetration. Now, if you're looking to compare this to an AMX-12T with an autoloader, I think this autoloader, however much I adore and love my 12T, I think this autoloader is better because of how quickly you can unload that entire clip and how short your reload is between the actual full reloads. I mean, 11 seconds and about 2 seconds to unload the entire clip. Isn't it like 2 seconds in between each shot on the AMX-12T? So the MT25 genuinely has gone from zero to hero. It's going to be a monster in the next patch. Try it out. I know a lot of people were disappointed with the 25 previously. I see no reason why anyone is going to be disappointed, and I think these are going to be bullies for other light tanks, because they've got pretty good armor as well. And this is the point where half of you are triggered and half of you are really, really happy. And I guarantee by the time some of you have got to this point, you're already writing Russian bias in the comments. Which, in all fairness, they've given it a hell of an autoloader. And I genuinely think this thing is going to be very, very nasty now. Previously, I wasn't overly worried about one of these things if you came across it and you had something with armor. Now, it's going to be a really, really annoying little troll. Now, I mentioned French tanks then as well. Here is a list of what has been nerfed on the French tank light line. I would like to say I'm disappointed by this, but I expected it, because they are very, very powerful. And truth be told, I don't think they're significant nerfs. Not in a big deal anyway. Allow me to explain. AMX-12T, the reload on the Top Gun. Well, by the way, I'm only looking at the top spec. I mean, the stock gun has been nerfed on all of these as well, but I don't care. The main thing to look at is the Top Gun. And the reload has gone from 15.6 to 16.4. It's only a second. And really, you shouldn't be out of cover when you're on a reload of that size. So truth be told, when they've increased or added a second to the AMX 1390 and the AMX 12T, I don't actually think that's going to have a real significant difference. There's going to be circumstances, yes, but realistically, that's not that big a deal. And neither's the aim time. They've upped it, and it's going to cause a little bit more frustration sometimes. But I like to play this thing close range, and I intend on trying to do reviews or guides on these tanks ASAP, because I really, really like these tanks. So you'd think I would be somewhat gutted and disappointed by these nerfs, but I'm not overly disappointed. As I said, you've got to be fair, I kind of expected them. The ones which I think are the worst is the in-between shell, 1.33 to 2 seconds. It's not a huge deal, but it's enough to cause a frustration. The one which is hit hardest is the 1390. 2 seconds, I don't think, was any much of a problem. 2.5, you're obviously adding an extra second there, and you need that extra second. Because it's during that time, I think, is when you are most exposed. So, I don't think the AMX 1390 deserves that little increase in between its shells, but I'm just going to have to wait to see how it pans out. And good news for the Batchat. Good news for the Batchat. The repair cost has been reduced by 62%, so that should help in terms of profitability. There are so many more tanks to cover still, but I'm going to put up the main details in the middle here, otherwise putting test footage of every single tank is going to be ridiculously long. But the ARL V39, that's received a welcome buff in terms of hit points from 780 to 900. But the ARL 44 has received quite a nasty hit to its 105mm gun. Now the reload is going from 10.5 to 13.13. That's quite a big difference. And that's also the same as the track traverse has been nuffed. The track traverse has been nerfed, and so has the dispersion. It's been increased. So not good news for the ARL 44 fans. The way to overcome this, to a degree, is to stop using the 105 and use the 90mm. Which, if you ask me, should be the gun of choice anyway, but it seems that the 105 is quite popular, and as a result it's been nerfed, sadly. Swiftly moving on, there's been some big buffs and some fairly significant nerfs to the Germans. The Stug has had a hit point increase from 520 to 560, and the top speed has been increased from 40 to 55. The reverse speed has also received an extra 5 km per hour. View range buffed from 220 to 240, and then ground terrain resistances and dispersion on the move has also been improved. In other words, the Stug is going to be slightly OP going forward. That's quite a buff. The backhand, sadly the VK2801, has received various different nerfs. Now I know this is a fan favourite, and fan favourites fairly often get nerfed. And the reason for that, quite simply, honestly, is because they're fan favourites for a reason. And they're usually very strong. Now some of these I feel are justified, some of them I don't understand why it needed it. For example, Top speed reduced from 72 to 65. That's not a big deal, that's fair enough. But the reload has gone from 6.19 to 6.42. That's sod all. That's 0.2 pretty much. It's neither here or there. Aim time increased from 4 to 4.45. Again, rather insignificant. And dispersion has gone from 0.32 to 0.34. Again, insignificant. Add them all together and you get what I personally, honestly, I know I'm going to get some stick for this, but it's not a bad nerf. I mean, 0.2 seconds to a reload, come on, there's nothing. The problem, though, I think, is the depression elevation angles decreased from -9 to -6. Now, the reason I feel that one is significant is because you have to alter your playstyle. Where you're used to setting up on certain ridges, etc., you just can't do that anymore. So the other changes are really going to have no difference whatsoever in the big picture. But that last one, in terms of gun depression and elevation, that is going to make quite a difference. So we're going to have to wait to see what that does to her. In other German news, the Flat Panzer and the Nashorn have both received pretty good buffs. I mean, the forward speed on the Flat Panzer has gone from 38 to 45, and reverse speed 10 up to 14. But it's the reload. On the 7.5 Pak 42 L70, it's been decreased from 4.51 to 3.55. In other words, if you want to know what an E25 is like, there is now one in the tech tree. That's going to be good fun. Looking forward to actually playing that again. And the Nashorn is one of my favourites. But it's had, again, quite a big buff in terms of mobility and hit points. 800 to 1000. Maximum forward speed increased from 40 to 45. Extra 50 brake horsepower added. And your track traverse speed has gone up. That's insignificant and irrelevant. 43.38 to 43.59. Why even bother? Why would you do that? And then they've just improved dispersion on the move and gun movement. Flat Panzer is now going to be one hell of a fun machine. Nashorn, well, I don't think it needed it because the gun is amazing on it anyway. But I think if you put that tank in its right environment, it's probably going to be ridiculously powerful now. Now, there have been a couple of other buffs to other tanks, like an SU-100. That's gone from 760 hit points to 850. Reloads dropped by 2 seconds on both the guns. There's changes to the Churchill and the Churchill 7 and the T54E1, but they're insignificant, and to talk about them in depth is probably going to add another few minutes to the video, which probably is going to make me go off on a tangent, and so on and so forth. So they're probably in a news article. I'd recommend having a good read through them. But yeah, update 4.4, guys, is going to bring a huge amount of changes to tanks, and there is still more to come. Thank you all for watching this video, guys. I hope you have enjoyed it. Tried to get the information out as soon as I could, and to keep it to a minimum in terms of time frame, and we're still coming up 20 minutes, which is why we have the wording and not videos for every single tank change. But thank you all for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.